Time now for Falcons Central. Here's Aaron Freeman and Scott Carasik.
Fly high, Falcons, straight down the field. Fly high, Falcons, never to yield. Red and silver is Atlanta's team. When the game is over, you will reign supreme. Come on and fly.
Atlanta Falcons football is here once again. Man, that's where I was born. What's up, Black Male?
That Fly High Falcons still makes me think of my grandfather every single time, because that was probably what they played when he went to games back in when they first started the team. Just so old. It's like a college theme song, or like a college fight song. It's great. But welcome to Falcons Central podcast. I've got Aaron Freeman with me today, as usual. And we've got Brian Finneran, a longtime receiver for the Falcons. Also, currently, he's a host on 680 The Fan. And, I mean, yeah, welcome to the show, Brian.
Hey, thanks a lot. We need to remake that intro for that old Falcon song. We need some fresh stuff on there.
I'm thinking some Willie Mo Always Ready would probably be good.
That would be fantastic. Anything but what I just heard.
That's kind of my feelings on that one.
Hey, listen, a little old school is never terrible, but that was a little rough. I appreciate the effort, though.
Oh, that's always good.
Oh, man.
So
Brian, we'd like to have you on the show. As you are aware, the OTAs began this week, and we'd like to talk some Falcons with you.
Yeah, no question. Excited about the OTAs. Gives the young kids, for the most part, a chance to show what they're all about, the ones that are there, and then the older guys an opportunity to get back on the football field and make sure they still got it. So from what I've heard from Falcons camp, most of the guys are there. I think Roddy White and Tony Gonzalez may be the two guys that may be missing on the offensive side of the ball. They were, I think Roddy's doing some specific workout stuff out of town, and then Tony has it in his contract that he'll be here in training camp and maybe a little bit for the mini camp. But rumor has it Steven Jackson looks solid, and they're excited for him to be there. Osi Umenyiora, one of the first guys in the building in the morning, and then out of there right after practice. And they had a nice surprise with Asante Samuel showing up for the first day of OTAs yesterday. So that was a nice treat for those guys.
Okay.
So as a player, what was your take on OTAs? You know, were they always something that you wanted to do, or were you just kind of like, oh, this is the summer? Or was it just nice to get back to the field?
No, it was good. I thought it was nice to get back on the football field. They're a little different now. There's fewer of them, and maybe not quite as intense as they used to be. But it gives the players a chance. They've been lifting weights now for a good month and a half, maybe, and it gives the players a chance to get on the football field and do some football drills, catch the football, run with it, work on special teams, fundamentals, and then the best way to learn how to run routes and understand the offense is to get out there and do it. And I think that's the main thing with OTAs. It gives you kind of that refresher course if you have a system that's in place. And if you got a new system, it gives you an opportunity to really get after it and get your hands around it and understand it. So I think by being on the field, going through the new defense, a new offense, or what's been in place for a year or more, just give you a chance to get back in the flow. It's fun, get to smell the grass and mix it up with the fellas a little bit, put the helmet on, and get a good sweat in.
Okay. So basically it's getting the rust off from the summer, or getting the rust off from the off season, and just kind of getting back in the flow of things is what OTAs are good for. Not really.
No question. And then again, it gives the young players that are there an opportunity to see what it means to be a professional football player on the field. Hopefully some of those veterans like Osi and Sean Weatherspoon, and on the offensive side of the ball, Matt Ryan and Julio and Harry Douglas, can show those younger kids what it means to work, how you're supposed to practice, and it gives you an opportunity to go through the plays and learn live as opposed to just reading about them in a playbook. And I think that's the best way to learn the offense, defense, and special teams. I think just get out there and do it. But so it gives you an opportunity to do that and get in the football mode and get a feel for it.
Okay.
Okay. So, Brian, you said that Roddy wasn't there. I'm assuming that Roddy doesn't have to be there because you taught him everything he needs to know playing the wide receiver position.
You nailed it. Nice work. I wish that was the case. We can always get better as athletes. You're always striving to be the best at your business, and Roddy could afford to be there. Most of the OTAs are optional, highly stressed by coaches and staff that you're there. Used to call them voluntary, mandatory. So you try to get there as much as you can. They're important because it's the first time the team is together as a whole on the football field working. And but Roddy, again, 8-9-year vet, been there, done that, leader on the football team. You like to see him there. You like to see him in camp and doing the right things and being a part of it. But Roddy's in a system now that he's been in for a while. He understands it, and I think his focus this offseason is getting the best shape that he possibly can, and he's down there maybe in Phoenix or somewhere doing that right now. So don't worry about Roddy. He'll be fine, and yes, I did teach him almost everything he knows.
So what would you say the number one thing is that you taught him, that you're seeing on or off the field?
Oh, for Roddy? Well, he'll probably have to start in the meeting rooms and off the field. Roddy came in with the Falcons as a late first rounder, and a bit of a punk from University of Alabama, Birmingham, and thought he had it made. Didn't want to play special teams, had no desire to do so, and showed everybody that by either not paying attention or doing whatever he was doing. So Roddy took a while to come around, and we had some battles internally, Roddy and I. I was tough on Roddy because I saw how much talent he had as a young rookie. He was a special athlete. That was a really good football player, but I didn't think he was applying himself like he should. And I think he'll be the first to tell you his first year or so he wasn't he didn't do that. But he's come around, and I feel like I hope that I had an impact on him early in his career as far as studying, being a true pro. Try to keep him out of the streets here in Atlanta, which is very tempting. As a rookie with some money, he finally came around the second, third year, became the football player he was supposed to be, and I like to think I had a little bit to do with that.
Speaking of absences, I heard that Desmond Trufant wasn't going to be at OTAs because he's graduating. Do you think, he's going to miss a whole lot this first week or so? And will he be able to catch up by the time training camp starts?
He'll be okay. He'll miss a little bit right now, but you'd like to see the guys graduate and get their degree because football only lasts for so long, and he'll need to fall back on that degree before he knows it. So good for him that he's graduating and getting that degree. He'll miss a few OTAs, but in the long run, he'll be fine. He'll put more and extra time in with the defensive back coach, Tim Lewis, and the defensive coordinator, Mike Nolan. They'll have plenty of time with Desmond Trufant to get him to understand. He'll have plenty of one-on-one meetings. And when he gets here, the good thing is when he gets to Atlanta and graduates, he's going to be thrown in the mix because from my calculations, he will be the starting quarterback. And if they have 10 plays of 7-on-7, he's going to get 7 or 8 of them. So he'll get all the reps he needs between now and training camp, so he'll be just fine.
So during the playoffs, there was this guy wearing number 86 out there.
Imposter.
Chase Kaufman. And a couple of people were like, wait, I thought Brian Finneran retired a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Because he looked exactly like you, positioned his body exactly like you used to, and then caught the ball for an 8-yard first down. It was a Brian Finneran play. Like 3rd and 7, went out, got 8 yards, and then got tackled. Or went out and got 6 yards, and then you would gain a couple more and then get hit. I mean, just that clutch play that towards the end of your career, that's what everybody knew you for.
Yeah, it was kind of bittersweet. We were in a playoff game, and he had a big catch on a corner route. I was there with my wife and two oldest kids, and Connor and Brennan. We were at the game, and we saw this big number 86 white guy playing tight end, athletic-looking kid, and went down, ran a corner route, had a big catch for a first down like you're talking about, and moved the chains. And it was neat to see, but at the same time, it was one of those things where you're so used to wearing that number and watching film with you in that jersey and everything else. It was a little bittersweet, but good to see that Chase was able to make a few plays this year, and hopefully he continue to step up and do that, because they're going to need a guy wearing that 86 jersey in Chase Coffin to step up a little bit and help out where Tony Gonzalez either needs a breather or is banged up or whatever it might be. Chase will be your backup guy there. So yeah, it was interesting though, and a little bittersweet for sure.
So another guy who looks kind of like a power forward is Levine Toilolo. And I realize I'm talking about tight ends, but you kind of filled that hybrid role late in your career. What are your thoughts on him?
Well, I've seen a little bit of film on him. I haven't seen a ton. He's super tall. I think he's 6'8". I don't think he's a pure catcher of the football. A lot of times you see guys that kind of fight the football as receivers and tight ends. I don't think he fights it a ton, but I don't think he's a pure catcher either. So I think working with Tony Gonzalez will be fantastic for him. I think he has the ultimate teacher, at his beck and call during training camp when he's going to be there. Toilolo needs to get with Tony Gonzalez consistently during training camp and during the season and pick his brain, copy what he does, and imitate Tony Gonzalez on the practice field, catching footballs before and after practice, learn how to become that the ultimate professional football player, and he could be okay. I think he's a work in progress, but I think he has the size and the frame to be a threat in the red zone for jump balls and corner routes and things like that. Could be a good pickup for the Falcons.
Okay. Brian, talking about Chase Coffin making that catch, do you ever get the itch to come back and play? You've been out of the league for 2-3 years now. Do you ever feel like, you can suit up and take it to other teams on Sundays?
You know what? Not necessarily suit up and play on Sundays. I don't necessarily miss. I'll watch the games and I'll be fine. Sometimes when we get in the red zone, the Falcons in the red zone, I'm like, man, I wish I was in there and could throw me a fade route or something like that. But you know what I miss a lot? Obviously, locker room, camaraderie with the players. And then it was funny because I was at a few games watching the guys warm up, and I was able to get some sideline passes because I know people with the Falcons. And they hooked me up with some sideline passes, and I was able to stand down there and watch them warm up and run routes and catch balls with the quarterbacks and stretch with the team. And it was weird. I missed that almost more than playing, and I can't tell you why. But it was a cool, calm, kind of collected time with all the guys running around, getting warmed up for the biggest stage almost in the world right now, and that's whether it's Sunday Night Football or a playoff game or whatever it might have been. So I missed that part of it, but I don't necessarily miss playing. When OTAs started, and I started watching NFL Network, and you see guys running around with helmets and jerseys on, you look them. That I started missing it then too, and I can't tell you why because I wasn't a huge fan of football practice, but I missed being out there practicing with the guys and running around. So my body tells me just about every morning that I probably can't go out there on Sundays and play anymore. So that's probably a blessing in disguise. But I miss the guys. I miss running around in warm-ups and being a part of those big-time Monday night, Sunday night games.
I can
Well,
definitely
sounds like you don't miss getting hit.
Maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. You're exactly right. I like everything except getting nailed. Yeah.
No one
got
likes
hit a couple of times over the middle.
Yeah, it's funny.
No one
There's a guy
ever
on Sports Talk Radio was interviewing Mike Minter tonight, Chris Massaro, and I've done a few things with Chris in the past on whether it's Twitter or whatever it's been, and Chris is doing a deal tonight with Mike Minter. And I saw it, and I said, I shot him a tweet, and I said, Mike Minter hit me so hard one time, right underneath the chin. Vic threw me a slant, and Mike played for the Carolina Panthers. and it was late in the game. It was a 2-minute drill, and Mike threw it a slant, and Mike Minter was just sitting there waiting for me and just hammered me. So I shot Chris Massaro a text message and told him one of the hardest hits I ever took was from Mike Minter, right under the chin. I actually walked towards the wrong sideline briefly and then jogged off the field. And those are definitely the hits and things about football I don't miss. You're exactly right.
Okay.
So my question, just kind of getting away from the big hits over the middle, because we all know how unpleasant those are. The Falcons have a lot of undrafted free agent wide receivers between the past 2-3 years on their roster right now. You know, everybody outside of Julio Jones, Roddy White, and Harry Douglas are actually undrafted. Who out there do you think could compete for that not starting role, but for that roster spot?
At the receiver position?
At the receiver position.
Good question. I think you got to see more from Harry Douglas this year. I know he was drafted. You got to see more from Harry at that third receiver spot. But God forbid somebody in that top three you just mentioned, Julio, Roddy, and Harry, one of those guys gets hurt. Tim Toone's got to step up. Another guy, is it Dominic Davis is a guy that could be out there. Kevin Cohn, it did some impressive things on special teams. He's got good size, decent hands. So those are some of the names that come to mind. But Kevin Cohn, I think, probably one of the guys, played at Georgia Tech, 6'2", 215 kind of guy. Not a ton of college experience and statistics, but may be able to come in there because he can play some special teams and then fill in as a third receiver, or fourth receiver, I should say. Beyond that, it's tough. Somebody has to step up. Drew Davis was the other guy I was thinking about. And Drew actually had a touchdown last year, I think, in a couple games he played in. And another decent-sized kid, 6'1", 205, out of Oregon. So between Drew Davis and Kevin Cohn, I think those are the two guys they'll be leaning on, not only for special team duties, but that fourth receiver. And if somebody gets banged up, they'll be the first guys you should go in there.
Great insight on some of those young receivers. Brian, what are your overall expectations for the Falcons season? Are you expecting them to be back where they finished last year and get beyond? Or what is your gut feeling about how good this Falcon team can be?
I think they'll be a solid football team. I think their schedule is crazy tough this year. They got 5 primetime games. I think they got New Orleans on a prime time. They open up in New Orleans, which is going to be tough. They have to go to San Francisco late in December. They got to go to Green Bay in December as well, I think. And there's New England at home. So they got their hands full. It looks like Tampa Bay's getting better on the defensive side of the ball. All the additions they put there with Revis and the safeties they have right now, Golson they picked up from San Fran. So Carolina is not going to be a pushover either. They seem to give the Falcons issues with Cam Newton at the helm as well. So I like the Falcons about 10-6 if they do really well, 11-5. But those 11 wins are going to be against some big-time football teams that are coming in here, and it'll be interesting to see how they handle the primetime games because travel's going to be tough, late nights, different schedule for the players. This is a team that's been, playoff team for the last 5 years, and you expect the same, but there's no telling with injuries and the tough schedule this year. It could be interesting. I still like them making the playoffs, but I'm not sure they're going to go 12-4 or 13-3 or 11-5. So 10-6, 11-5 is where I like them right now, and we'll see what happens. But still, a solid football team. Offense, I think, got better in the backfield with Steven Jackson, and is still strong out wide. And bringing Tony Gonzalez back was huge as well. So I think the defensive side of the ball there's a couple of question marks, and I think by week 4, 5, and 6, we'll know if those rookie cornerbacks are ready to play. If OC is back to his usual sack and self, and our linebackers are able to cover tight end and get after people, will be defense. I think is the biggest question mark.
Okay, so that answered one of the final questions that I had. I got one more question though. As a player, what was it like being out there for those big primetime games? I mean, because we didn't have that many when you were here early on, but as the team got better, they get more. So how was it like being on Monday Night Football versus the Saints or one of those games?
Oh, yeah, unbelievable. And we had a fair share with Michael Vick at the helm. We had some big-time, primetime games back then. NFC Championship game in Philadelphia was huge. I think back in 2005 maybe. So we've had some big-time games, and there is, as tough as football is, and as miserable as practice can be sometimes, whether you're in high school or college or in the pros, practice is practice. It's hard work. It's helmets and pads and hitting and banging and headaches and sore bones and joints and everything else. When that Sunday night and Monday night game comes around, there is nothing better in the world. You forget about all those aches and pains. The lights are on you. You snap that football. You cover that first kickoff or return that first kickoff. The adrenaline's rushing. You get the chill bumps when the national anthem's playing and there's a flyover or something awesome like that. It's just Sundays at 1 o'clock, Sundays at noon, at 4, and especially the night games, Sunday and Monday, they are special events, and the players enjoy them. The league loves it, and it's a great feeling to be out there on the football field when those days come around.
Okay.
I wish I had the talent to do that.
Listen, I was fortunate to be an undrafted free agent out of Villanova and get cut a couple times in Seattle and Philly and stick around here in Atlanta for 11 years. It was a blessing, but I appreciate every minute of it, and those moments that we just talked about were what made it all worth it.
All right. Well, Brian, I consider myself one of your original fans because I got the chance to see you when you played in Barcelona.
Dang.
For, NFL Europe. So it goes way back. I've been a fan of yours for a long time.
What were you doing in Europe?
Oh,
were you there, or
I
you
saw
watched it on TV?
On TV, back when they actually had football in the spring.
Oh yeah, that was a blast. It was a shame they had to get rid of it, but it was sucking money out of the NFL, and but it was a great minor league system, and really got me back in the league. It truly did. I learned how to play a little bit of special teams, honed some of my skills at the receiver position, gained a little weight, matured as a football player, and on top of all that, got to travel to Germany and Amsterdam and Scotland and live in Barcelona for 3.5 months. So it was truly one of the highlights of my career.
All right. Well, Brian, we appreciate you being on the show with us. We hope we can consider you a friend of the show and have you on at future dates.
Absolutely, I'd love to.
You're on Front Row show.
Yep.
Weekdays 9 to 12, 680 The Fan. People can find you on Twitter at bfin86. Is that correct?
That is it. We're having a good time on the Front Row, 680 The Fan here in Atlanta, Sports Talk Radio, and 9 to noon, like you said. So appreciate you pubbing that. And, again, bfin86, at bfin86 on Twitter.
All right.
All right.
Well,
thanks for coming on, Brian.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks a lot, guys. You take it easy.
Well, that was Brian Finneran, kind of a cult hero for all Falcons fans, one of my personal favorites for years. I know he's been one of Aaron's personal favorites, again, since NFL Europe. I wish I could have gone to NFL Europe.
I think it was like 1999 or something like that. It makes me feel kind of old.
No, I'm just saying I wish they still did NFL Europe and we could go to Europe and watch like NFL players.
Yeah, it's a good resource, A lot of players came through the pipeline that had success in Atlanta. Brent Barnes was one, and obviously other players like Kurt Warner and among others were able to take success from Europe and translate it to the NFL. And I think the league definitely needs, I think it would help the league if they had a developmental league, but the European thing didn't exactly work because of the money situation that Brian was alluding to. But maybe they'll have something in the future.
Interesting. I just wish I could see a game. Sorry, a little selfish, but that's just kind of what I want to do. I feel like it'd be fun to watch a game while drinking a German beer in Germany.
Yeah. I think, football is becoming a big thing over there in Germany. It's kind of like a second sport other than soccer or European football or whatever. But I heard there was one of the reasons why they had to close the NFL Europe was because outside of Germany, it wasn't gaining much popularity. But I hear it's, gaining a little bit more popularity in England now that they've been having those games in London every year. And the rumors are that, eventually the NFL wants to put a team in England. What do you think about that, Scott?
As long as it's not the Falcons, and as long as the Falcons don't play them every year, I really don't care.
Okay. Yeah.
Does that sound bad? I just feel like a London trip is so taxing on the body. Like flying to London, you stay for maybe 2 days, and then you fly back. It's a 24-hour trip.
Yeah.
I'm not saying like the flight itself was 24 hours. I'm just saying the overall trip is 24 hours between from your room at home to the hotel room there. It takes a full day of travel. That is not fun. Maybe if somebody invented teleporters, I'd be all for it. But other than that, no, I'm not for a London trip.
2 off the list when I get London tickets.
Yeah. I mean, again, maybe if I'm doing like an ultimate road trip type deal, hell yeah, I'll go to London. But as far as like a standard, just simple every week, nah, not for me.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of being on an airplane for more than an hour.
You wouldn't even make the Charleston to Atlanta flight then. That's an hour and
Pretty
15
much.
minutes.
Yeah, I usually just sleep through those longer flights. And, I'm not a big fan of flying, so I don't think I've flown in like 8 years.
Scary. So apparently Brent Grimes looked pretty good, according to Omar Kelly of, I forget what Miami paper, I think it's the Sun Sentinel.
There's like 8 of them. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, there's like 12 different papers in Miami. But I think he's part of the Sun Sentinel, which is like their big main one. But Omar Kelly says Brent Grimes was looking pretty good. Be honest with you, I'm not really... I mean, no offense to Brent Grimes. Like, you did great here in Atlanta, and, we loved you here, but there comes a point when you just move on. And that's this year.
It's a little hard for me to say goodbye. I was such a huge fan of Brent Grimes, and it's unfortunate that the Falcons and him and, Miko or whoever couldn't come to some accord. What he signed for in Miami, I think, was real cheap for the type of player that he is, and you kind of wish the Falcons had gotten such a bargain basement price. But, as you say, you kind of got to move on. And, Desmond Trufant, Robert Alford, they're current Falcons, so we'll be rooting for them. And I guess, was it week 3 that we play the Dolphins?
Yeah, I think it is. And I'm perfectly okay with that.
Yeah, hopefully Julio will burn Brent Grimes a couple of times. And
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Would you rather have Brent Grimes for $5 million a year, or would you rather have... And I'm pretty sure Atlanta offered him lower than that, because Atlanta is very cheap when it comes to free agents. Or not cheap, but their market value. How many guys have had an Achilles rupture like that and come back just as strong?
Well, a couple of years ago, it would have been a devastating injury, but...
A couple of years ago, it's the career. I'm saying how many guys have come back from that and been the exact same player as before the very next year? He only signed a 1-year deal. He can still come back to Atlanta after that. There is no doors closed on Brent Grimes. It's the doors closed on what Brent Grimes was asking for, which was way too much for him.
Okay.
I mean,
well, I hope that day arrives. I don't know. I miss Grimes, basically. That's what I'm saying.
I feel like Robert Alford will end up being a more athletic version of Brent Grimes. Much, much faster player. Same kind of vertical. Same kind of agility scores. Better size, actual size, I should say. Because Grimes is all of 5'3" with heels on.
Yeah, he was kind of small.
I mean, let's be honest here. Grimes was probably, on a good day, 5'9". Realistically, 5'9". I'm just saying 5'3" to talk shit, but realistically, he was about 5'9". That's not great, but it's not horrible, but it's not great. Alford legitimately at the combine was 5'10", 188, which is what Grimes was listed at for 5 years, and nobody believed. So, Falcons got bigger, faster, better cornerbacks than what they had last year. Because I think we could all agree that Dante Robinson is going to be worse than Desmond Trufant this year. No matter how, even if Trufant just plays NFL average. Yeah, no.
Yeah, I agree with that. Robinson was horrible. So, Trufant will have to try extra hard just to be worse than Dante Robinson.
Exactly. He would have to try hard to be worse on third downs at least. I don't know how. Ugh. Whipping boy. That's the only word you can use to describe what happened to Dante Robinson on third downs. But Alford, Trufant, they were two of my favorite players in this year's draft. I just had this feeling that the Falcons were going to take Trufant.
Mm-hmm.
And then, speaking of the cap space saved from Brent Grimes, would you rather have paid Brent Grimes that $5 million or saved it for a situation that's coming up in about 3 days, getting Richard Seymour?
Wait. You're asking me would I rather spend the $5 million on Brent Grimes or get Richard Seymour?
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, I would rather have Brent Grimes, but...
Really?
Yeah.
So we're going to be on opposite sides of this one.
Okay.
Because
well,
what's the argument against Seymour right now?
Okay. Here's my argument against Seymour, and that I should preface this by saying I'm not really against Seymour, but if it's an either-or question, I'll go with option A. I think the argument against Seymour would be he's at a point in his career where he's, the light is at, he can see the light at the end of the tunnel. He's very close to that light, as opposed to Brent Grimes, who's 29, and the caliber and style of cornerback he is, which is a more technically sound, fundamentals-based cornerback, can extend his career well into his mid-30s. So, longevity, Brent Grimes could have another 3 or 4 good years, while Seymour is probably in his last season as an NFL player.
Okay. Because my view is it's a very deep cornerback draft. It's a very top-heavy cornerback draft. You know this going into it. You plan for it. You're sitting there, you're targeting Desmond Trufant regardless of what happens with Brent Grimes because you need a guy who can replace Dante Robinson. Why bring back Brent Grimes if you already know who your starting corners are going to be? You got Samuel, you'll have Trufant. Why would you need Grimes? You know McLean can play the nickel, so you've got your top 3 guys right there. So why not save that money and spend it on defensive tackle, where this year's defensive tackle class wasn't as great as people were trying to make it out to be. There's a lot of top talent, the Sheldon Richardson, Sharif Floyds, but there wasn't that guy who could create the same kind of push in the middle, where the Falcons were selecting in, say, the 4th round, where they had to pick somebody.
Mm-hmm. I
So
agree with that.
I mean, yeah, you had guys like Benny Logan. You had guys like Jesse Williams, who I would have rather seen Jesse Williams than Levine Toilolo, personally.
Mm-hmm.
And I like Levine Toilolo, but I would have rather seen Jesse Williams. Or when the Falcons traded up in the 5th, had it be for Jesse Williams as opposed to Mapanga. Just because I really like that big body defensive tackle who can push a pocket. But, I mean, there's a
Seymour
lot.
is that. He's that
What?
big body that can push the pocket.
Yeah, Seymour's definitely that big body that can push the pocket that Atlanta doesn't really have as the one tech right now in Peters. Peters can push the pocket. He's just not the one tech. Or he's not the big body. He's 6'3", 300. Jerry's 6'2", 290. Those are your guys that are pushing the pocket. Even Travian Robertson, who's like the biggest tackle that Atlanta has right now, is 6'4", 310. So they're going to have to wait a year, which is fine. There's a ton of huge guys in the 2014 draft. That's probably why they haven't signed any of their guys past 2014. So, I mean, when looking forward, I realize we're not a draft show, but when looking forward into the draft next year, I don't see why they wouldn't look at guys like Kelly Keepy of Oregon, Rumpf of Kentucky, throwing out a name, Garrison Smith of Georgia, because there's always that guy that wants everybody from Georgia. And then you've got Will Sutton from Arizona State, who you want your next John Babineau? Watch Will Sutton at Arizona State. You will love it.
Yeah, I've seen a little bit of Sutton. He's a disruptive guy.
He's 6'1", 6'2", maybe about 280, 285, maybe. Sounds like a young Babs.
Mm-hmm.
I think he would be the ideal person. I think you can easily sign Peters back for about $3 million a year. That's just talking with Greg Linton, though. That's about what the market value is.
Yeah, that sounds all right.
I mean, and there are some free agents next year, of course, that probably need to be addressed. You've got, let's see, pulling up the cap sheet right now. You'll have Tony Gonzalez. Probably not really worried about Tony, just because he's gone after this year. He's already said so. Chase Kaufman, he's going to have to show something. On the offensive line, Mike Johnson and my boy Joe Hawley. What are your thoughts on if Joe Hawley beats Peter Kahn's out for center? If that happens, what's the line going to look like?
I'm not one of those Joe Hawley haters. I do like certain aspects of Joe Hawley's game. I do think there are some skills that I think he does well that, say, Peter Kahn's doesn't do particularly well, like blocking downfield. And, when with Dirk Cutter's offense as opposed to what Mike Mularkey ran, we do run a lot more zone blocking, and it helps when you're going to be a zone blocking line if your center can get to that second level, open up those cutback lanes, which Todd McClure is excellent at. And, I think Hawley can do that a little bit better than Kahns could. So, we can, I think that would benefit a lot more for someone like Jacqueline Rogers, who's, ideally suited to run behind the zone blocking line and, some of those stretch plays. So, I like the outlook of the Falcons offensive line that Joe Hawley wants to win the starting job.
Interesting. See, that's the thing. If Joe Hawley wins the starting job, and then you've got say Joe Hawley wins the starting job at center and Holmes wins the job at right tackle, then you've got 3 guys at right guard who are just – it doesn't really matter who plays there, I feel, between the 3 guys, because I feel like they've all got their strengths and weaknesses that could be good or could be horrible. But what's that one? What?
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's pretty safe to say that the Falcons have a vested interest in Peter Kahn's starting at one of those offensive line spots. So if Holly was to be the center, I think it would be Kahn's job to lose, just because he's a little bit higher draft pick than they like to give their draft picks opportunities to win jobs and play. Otherwise, someone like Parade Jerry would have been cut loose many, many years ago. But that's another argument.
Yeah, he probably would have. Looking back to 2010 draft when they did pick Peters, I kind of wish that they would have taken Geno Atkins in the 4th instead of Hawley, though. Knowing what I know now.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, hey, in 2 years we'd be taking a center anyway. We might as well take Geno Atkins. Because a backup center is only worth so much.
Yeah.
But speaking of free agent miscues, when they cut John Abraham, kind of sucked. Kind of stung everybody. No one liked it.
Mm-hmm.
Are you kind of shocked that he's still available? Because I know a little bit about what's going behind this and why he's still available.
Yeah, both him and Freeman, I was surprised that they did not get picked up earlier than they did. I guess I had always assumed they had to deal with finances and teams not wanting to meet their price tags for whatever reason. I don't know, but if you have any sort of insight, I'm more than willing to listen to it.
So essentially, Abraham is looking for a starting role. Nobody's going to give him a starting role, but that's what he wants. He wants at least 60% of the snaps at a minimum, and he wants to get paid about what O.C. Minora got paid. I don't see any team giving him that. I think in the end, the Falcons are going to end up re-signing him. It's going to be damn near veteran minimum, and it's going to be because somebody got hurt in camp. That's the only thing I see.
Okay. Well, I'll look forward to that day, because when they took 2 defensive ends, at least in my mind, it kind of closed the door on John Abraham coming back. And I heard some interviews with Thomas Dimitroff did after the draft, and people asked him about John Abraham, and he didn't, close the door on it. But he didn't seem like it was that much of a possibility. But we'll see.
He didn't close the door because he basically said, hey, if Abraham will take veteran minimum, that's about what we'll give him. That's my understanding.
He's more than worth it. I think so.
He's definitely more than worth it, but he's just – that's what happens when they get old. When players get old, the market falls out the bottom. And then when the market falls out the bottom, guys don't know what to do with themselves because they're so used to being the $5 million man or the $10 million man. And then they don't know. And speaking about contracts, good old Matty Ice. He's about to get a big new deal.
He is?
He is. Not right now, but probably in the next couple of weeks. Say about 3 weeks or so. They're going to sign Seymour. I think they're going to sign Seymour before they do the Matty Ice deal, though. It makes more sense.
Yeah.
And then the Matty Ice deal, it'll take money off the cap this year, but that won't really matter because the cap that they take off this year is just going to roll over into next year. Even if they give Ryan less money this year as far as cap hit, like say his cap hit gets lowered to about $6 million, and they free up $6 million worth of cap space, they're only going to push it to next year, and next year he's going to have a hit of about 15. But if you look at 2015, 2016, 2017, they've got so much open space, it's ridiculous. Like even looking at his deal is going to go all the way through 2018 or 2019. It has to. That's the open market value for him right now. Probably 6 years, $120 million, same as Joe Flacco.
The interesting thing about the Ryan deal, I think a lot of people focused on the big number, the $20 million a year. It's really about the guaranteed money. That's what these contracts nowadays are really about, because the guaranteed money indicates when, not in the case of Matt Ryan, but, say you give somebody a certain amount of guaranteed money. Once the guaranteed money dries up, then you can cut a guy. But in the case of Matt Ryan, based on how much the guaranteed money is going to be based around when he's going to be asked to renegotiate his deal, whether it's 3, 4, or 5 years down the road. Because as in the case of a player like Tom Brady, who I think originally got his big extension back in 2002, has since then gotten 3 or 4 extensions when he's reached a point where his cap number has been a bit too high for the Patriots' face. And so they renegotiate to lower that cap money, and then they always add on a couple extra years. So it really boils down to the guaranteed money as a part of Ryan's deal. That's really what matters.
I think he'll end up with a good $40 to $45 million guaranteed. Arthur Blank has shown with Michael Vick that he is more than willing to make sure that his quarterback gets paid, if that quarterback can be the face of the franchise. Obviously, he picked the wrong guy in Michael Vick, but that's a whole other thing, because he's I think he's scum for what he did. He stole money from the city. Yeah, Vic. He stole money from the city and from the players and from the team. Not directly stole it from the players, not directly from the city, but he did steal it from the city. He did steal it from the players. Because the money for his deal took away from, keeping Patrick Kearney, who I would have much rather seen get a contract extension and stay with the team 2007, 2008, 2009. Then, could you imagine Patrick Kearney in 08 and 09? In 07? You wouldn't have had to draft that POS Jamal Anderson. You would have traded that third-round pick that you used on LaRon Robinson with that Jamal Anderson pick, and you were just taking Adrian Peterson. Holy shit. What a concept. And then you don't sign Michael Turner in 2008. Because you don't need Michael Turner in 2008. I'm sorry. I feel like I like Rich McKay, but the whole Vic contract, I feel like it was signed in 2000. It was signed in 2006, right?
It was 2004, actually.
2004?
Yeah, 2004.
Either way, it was the most misguided contract I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I
don't have an issue with the drafting of Vic, but that contract really was, I think, the point where things got out of whack in Atlanta, because I think, at the time it was either him or Peyton Manning had their most lucrative contract in NFL history. And I think in the case of Vic, he kind of, thought he was Superman and thought he was untouchable. And he basically stopped putting in the work because he had made this huge money. And then, the whole issue with, him and the coaching staff and all that stuff, and then it just kind of spitballed and, snowballed or whatever to the eventual situation that it ended up becoming.
I mean, I do enjoy I do enjoy the idea that, maybe he could have been a great quarterback for the Falcons, but I think we're seeing in Philly exactly what he could have been was what he was in 2010. That solid passer, but not great passer, barely over 3,000 yards, like a good to okay runner. That's what you were getting with Vic. He never put in the time to be a quarterback, though. He just said, hey, I'm going to go out there and freestyle it, which that more than anything else, that more than anything else pissed me off. The interviews that said, oh, maybe I should try harder in Atlanta. No shit. Instead of fighting dogs, maybe you should have tried harder.
Yeah. It's a shame. What could have been.
The only person lower than Ray Edwards on my former Falcon totem pole is Michael Vick.
I don't think anybody's lower than Ray Edwards on my totem pole, but Vic is in the, I guess, the bottom side, I guess.
I mean, you got Michael Vick, Ray Edwards. There are very few former Falcons that I actually hold a grudge against, actually. Very few. It's those two, like, way at the bottom. And right towards the top, you got some of the favorites. The Brian Finnerans, the Warwick Dunns, the John Abrahams, the Keith Brooking before he did the Dallas thing, which he's going to get forgiven and eventually put into the Ring of Honor because he's Keith Brooking. But no, there's very few people. I mean, Jamal Anderson, the second one, not the first one. Everybody loves the first one. But Jamal Anderson, number 2, he's right above Ray Edwards. Again, not saying much.
Okay.
Bobby Petrino is probably right below Ray Edwards. But, yeah. And that's if you can consider him a Falcon. Which I don't claim him. He wasn't even in for a full season. That doesn't count.
No. I don't even figure Petrino into the mix. He just doesn't exist to me.
No. Like, I consider Mike Zimmer more of a former Falcon than Bobby Petrino. I kind of wish we would have kept Mike Zimmer instead of bringing in Pornstash Van Gorder.
Yeah, that's a shame. I mean, Mike Zimmer's killing it in Cincinnati with Geno Atkins.
Well, even that 2007 defense that Atlanta ran was pretty decent.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, just pulling up some basic stats for the 2007 defense. Atlanta was ranked. Okay, Atlanta wasn't ranked yardage-wise very well. Or points-wise. Okay, they weren't very good points or yardage-wise, but he did a lot with a shitty group of talent.
Yeah.
An absolute crap fest. Let me pull up. Let me pull up your starting. Let me pull up your opening day 2007 defense. The defensive line was Jamal Anderson, Rod Coleman, Grady Jackson, and John Abraham. Pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Downhill from there. Michael Boley and Demario Williams should have never been starting in any defense anywhere. Horrible in coverage. Some of my favorite players when they were with the Falcons, but they were not good. Keith Brooking. Okay, he's good. He's good. We'll take him. But D'Angelo Hall probably should have not been starting. Lewis Sanders, David Irons, Chris Houston, Jimmy Williams, even with the team, was ridiculous to me. Like, I was all excited about a future of a Jimmy Williams and Darren Stone backfield.
Darren Stone, wow.
Yeah, Darren Stone.
Taking it way back.
Yeah, the guy who wears number 39 for the Falcons now, I'd rather play safety for a defense than Darren Stone. But to be fair, he's a tank.
Wasn't Darren Stone like the first YouTube sensation?
Yeah, he was. He absolutely was, because he jumped out of a pool.
Yeah. I couldn't remember if he jumped out of a pool, he jumped over a car. All the YouTube videos, they get muddled into one.
I just remember it being like the absolute last Madden game I bought for the PlayStation 2. That's about the only thing I remember about Darren Stone, and I remember he was my starting safety because I cut Lawyer Malloy because he sucked in Madden that year. Just absolutely awful.
Lawyer Malloy, that's a nice former Falcon. He's not, top 10, but I do have pleasant memories of William Malloy because he was one of the few players that 07 season didn't quit on the team, and I thought played pretty hard, even though the whole Petrino thing.
I feel like they let him stay in 08 because of 07.
Yeah.
Because he didn't have anything left. When Atlanta got him, he was a shell of what he was.
Mm-hmm.
He always had the coolest name, but he was still a shell of what he was. Oh, man. Sorry. We love to reminisce about former Falcons on this show. So speaking of which, we got to get Chuck Smith on here.
Yeah. I'll look forward to that.
He's like the Reggie White of the Atlanta Falcons. For those who don't understand why Chuck Smith is so important. Claude Humphrey may be considered a future Pro Bowler, but Chuck Smith should have already been there. Not Pro Bowler, but Hall of Famer. Chuck Smith should already be there. I'm probably overrating Chuck Smith, but still. He's
I
one
can
of my
still
favorite.
vividly remember Chuck Smith destroying Willie Roaf, Hall of Famer, a number of times during his playing career. I just remember it was like Willie Roaf, great offensive tackle, but for whatever reason, he just couldn't block Chuck Smith. So,
I'm trying to find where he ranks on the all-time sack leader because he's got to be. There we go. He's 103rd. All right, we're not talking the best in the world. And he's actually tied for 103rd with Rod Coleman, which is poetic to me. Because I'd love to have seen a defense with those two next to each other. But Chuck Smith was Atlanta's beast pass rusher, and he needs to be brought back as a pass rush coach. Like, now.
Yep. Says he can turn Corey Bierman into a double-digit sack guy year in and year out.
I'm not really worried about Corey Bierman at this point. I feel like Bierman's learned what he's going to learn. I feel like Bierman should probably just play linebacker. Yeah. Maybe even in the middle. I could see Bierman being a solid middle linebacker. Couldn't you?
Yeah, I could see that, actually.
Make him get back to where he was when he got drafted. About 245 pounds as opposed to the 260 that he's at now. 6'3", 245 would be a monster middle linebacker. He's got coverage ability. He's better in coverage than Akeem Dent is. No offense, Akeem. Love you, but Bierman's better in coverage. Like, it is what it is.
Yeah. And, he could be Brian Urlacher. Because last year they liked to use him running down the middle of the field to cover the defense like the Tampa 2. Same size as Urlacher, right? And Urlacher like 6'4", 250 or something like that?
Yeah, 6'4", 250. Although Brian Banks apparently is much faster than his 40 time would suggest. From all the people I talked to that were at OTAs, they say Banks flies around the field the same way that Brooking used to in the middle of his career. I'm good with that. That's a pretty fast linebacker. Guy who can play weak side, but fast enough for weak side, but playing in the middle because he's got the size. I would love to see Brian Banks win that job and Dent take over as strong side linebacker. Because I think Dent could honestly compete with the tight ends out there. I think he could take them on and do well. But Banks is going to be a long study. A long study.
I hope so. I hope, I think Dent might be better off moving to the outside. He played it at Georgia for, I think, a year or two. Just might be a better fit there.
I mean, he did play strong side linebacker. Oh, hey, guess what? Chuck Smith's going to be on next week. I asked for it. It happens.
You want to ask for $1 million from me if you got that magic power?
Nah. I don't have that kind of magic power. I'm just saying our producer's awesome. I mention a guy, and he's like, oh, yeah, we got him. Oh, awesome. Sweet.
Okay.
I can't complain. Chuck Smith. Again, the Reggie White of the Atlanta Falcons history. Anyway, that's about all I've got for this week.
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to next week when Chuck Smith will be joining us on Falcons Central podcast.
Hell yeah. Chuck Smith.
We want to thank Brian Finneran again. All you longtime Falcon fans probably already know where to find Brian Finneran, but if you don't, he is on the Front Row Show on 680 The Fan. That's 93.7 FM in Atlanta from 9 a.m. to 12 noon on weekdays. And you can catch Brian Finneran's tweets at bfin86 on Twitter.
Yes, thank you a lot, Brian. I definitely appreciate it. Again, the Chuck Smith of wide receivers so far. Well, I guess that's probably Terrence Mathis, but still.
Yeah.
If we're talking best wide receiver in Falcons history, no offense to any of the other wide receivers that we've had, but it's got to be Roddy White right now.
Finneran may not be the best, but he's certainly one of the favorites in Falcons history.
I think people related to Finneran because they said, you know what? He's what we would be if we could go on the field. Because he wasn't the biggest, he wasn't the fastest, he may have been the tallest, but he wasn't like the biggest. And he just busted his ass every play.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, if y'all have any questions for us, feel free to hit me on my Twitter account at Scott Carasik. You can hit Aaron at FalcFans. Anytime during the week, we'll cover your questions, and then we also have our own show account of at Falcons PFC. That's Pro Football Central. Again, send it to any of them. We'll be glad to answer the questions on air, off air. Just let us know.
Thanks for tuning in to Falcons Central. For Falcons news, blogs, stats, highlights, and more, log on to ProFootballCentral.com.